Welcome to the Rest Round with Butch and Garry Hashman.
All right, guys, we're back to the Rest Round with Garry Hashman, Butch Hiles. We got Ron Jacobs on here, who's been my friend for years and years and years. And so I wanted to have him on for various reasons. Actually, we don't even know why, right? That's what we're just sitting here talking. But it's good for us all to get together. There's one reason is obviously me and Ron are going to hang out this weekend and do some training and stuff. So that's one reason. But really, because I think all of us, the three of us, and maybe not obviously together, but different times, we kind of bounce each other, like ideals off each other, right? And it's not even about like we share stuff. Like I think we all have like some unique ideals, and then maybe sometimes we have new ideals or whatever, but we'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And then it doesn't matter what we think about it. Sometimes we're trying it anyway, and then we kind of report back. So, and that goes with my like never ending thing. I think we're trying to get better at jiu-jitsu or coaching or any of that stuff, because I do think it's like a never ending process. And if it's not, then you get stagnant and you get left behind. Just like I think, like jiu-jitsu kind of constantly changes and progresses in a way, right? Things get hot, things get new. For example, I guess the best thing we can say is like, recently within the last 5, maybe 10 years, probably less than that, Danaher Death Squad all of a sudden revolutionized stuff. It's like stuff that was kind of going around, kind of not, right? Like meaning, they're doing whatever you want to call it, saddle position 411, honey hole. There's arguments that Dean Lister started all that stuff anyway, or other people. And that's why I always say it's like an argument, like even De La Riva, then you have an argument that Carlson Gracie is like, well, I started that. It was called the Jello guard, right? It's like, whatever you want to say, it still got popular at a certain time. And my point is the same thing. If you're not teaching new stuff, then people like will be at your gym and be like, man, they don't do anything new. It's like so boring. They're just all old school. And that may or may not be the truth anyway, right? It's just like you have to kind of do that. And the same thing with coaching. I mean, I think we just were talking about this offline. It was like a kind of a nerd. So I like hearing like getting on other podcasts, and Ron and I share podcasts a lot with just all kinds of random people. Just if we hear something that's like a good teaching philosophy, or just even if somebody gets on there and says some cool stuff, we'll be like, hey man, like listen to this one, it's kind of cool. And for example, we probably should give a couple of those people some props, but those like Sticky Hooks guys, I really listen to a couple of those, right? That's the name of their podcast, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I like that, and like Lex Friedman, of course, and the known ones. But I really like when like even Lex or Joe Rogan, when they have people on and they dive deeper into that stuff, like when Jocko was on Joe Rogan. I love that podcast because it actually made me more motivated, because he really talked about living a jiu-jitsu lifestyle and how jiu-jitsu impacted the way he ate, the way he ran, like the way he worked out. And it's, then it's motivating. And then of course, when Lex has Danaher on and all these people, like it's just really inspiring. So because I like that, that's kind of what I want to do with recently. This is like my new hot topic, is just bothering the F out of people with what you do. So that big long intro is, obviously you have a gym, Blackstone Jiu-Jitsu in Virginia. And this is going to be a hard question to answer like right off the bat. So like, what would you think your philosophy is and teaching style? And again, that's a lot to unload on the very first question. So let's try that one out, right?
Yeah, no worries. I got a lot from being with you for so many years. I think I started, training with you in 2000. So really getting to see that and kind of setting up how I want to train, and with the curriculum based stuff, I think it's awesome. And we can talk about that as we go. But I try to just keep it simple to where I've been to a lot of gyms, and everybody has their own way. And that's awesome, right? I think that's great that everybody has their own way. And when I opened mine, there was a certain, methodology that I wanted to go down. So being that I am an instructor, I teach for a living, for the, in the military, and now for the government and all that kind of stuff. I just try to keep it simple, stupid. Like I'll teach max 2 techniques in one night. And that's if we make it to the second technique, because I'll go into places and they're teaching 5, 6, 8, whatever. And not knocking that, but I wonder how much retention there is, right? Like when people walk off the mat and they go home and they're doing their regular lives and they come back, I want them to be able to remember what I taught. and be able to put that into play right away. And so that's how I kind of keep it, like max 2 techniques, and we rep and rep and rep and rep them. And then we try to put them in some live drilling situations, not necessarily just free roll. And I try to really, I want a place where everybody can have fun first and foremost. So like, I don't push the competition stuff. Nothing against that. Like I have competed, and, you know, I was in some schools that were heavy into competition, and that was awesome. It's just not really like what I like to do. So I don't really push that. I want everybody to have a good time, and I want everybody to leave what's outside. Just come in, get on the mat, have a good time, sweat, like be around some like-minded people, and then, you know, go about their day and hopefully just make their day better. So that's what I try to do there. But we just keep it simple. Like I want to teach, you know, a limited number of techniques every night, and I want the people to start ingraining that into their roles right away, rather than have to recall, like, what did he teach that one time? I don't remember. It doesn't work for me. I can't remember, you know. So that's what we try to stick to there. Just keep it simple.
When you go to those limited techniques and you say you're doing 1, maybe 2 a night, do you repeat those, or is it 1 that night and then the next class that you come in, it's something similar to that or based on that same guard or attack series? How are you setting it up as far as like curriculum style, or do you have a curriculum style?
Yeah, 100%. I still use the curriculum style, and that's, you know, it's a great topic to get into. But so, you know, we're all, you know, since being with Butch, we're all in this curriculum. But I'll just say, like, hey, we're going to talk about, you know, like maybe passing guard, you know. So how do I actually sit inside of somebody's closed guard with correct posture, you know, doing all those things to keep myself from getting broken down? And that may be the class in itself. And then for that week or 2 weeks, or maybe that month, whatever it is, we'll stick to kind of that topic. And then, you know, start adding stuff until we've gotten, say we're just working on first stripe white belt, until we've gotten through that section. And then, like, I don't do a lot of like running or shrimping or all those type warm-ups. Like my warm-ups are flow drills with the techniques that were taught prior. So, hey, do this into this, into this, and starting to chain all those techniques together and making sure that they remember them from, you know, previous, not just like, hey, I hit it one night, it's gone. Like now it's your responsibility to remember it. I keep trying to incorporate those things into the warm-ups and into the next class and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think, and the hardest part of that whole thing, I think we were just talking to somebody recently, and I think that the nail they hit on the head, and I don't remember who it was, but it's always hard when it's not the same people, right? It's like, because I'll have, you know, like I'm doing half butterfly right now, you know, laying on your back. There's different ways you can do it, but that's, you know, if you do like the Adam Wardzinski or however he says his name, he calls it lazy butterflies. That means just laying on your back. But the point is, like, there's some material I'm trying to get through, and I've got this vision in my head that I'm gonna go this, and it's gonna take a while, and we're always building on it. And then, you know, for like, we'll start at the next class what we left off in the other, so that we get more drills in, and it's building. And then ultimately, if I do my job correctly, it comes in a circle, right? And sometimes if I do my job correctly, it goes into even like maybe the last, you know, a couple months ago session we did, like, you know, maybe, you know, it comes back. Like, for example, we did some single X into Ashley, right? But then from there, you know, everything was transitioning, you know, doing leg locks, but we can do from half butterfly, we can get into single X, right? Like it's all kind of coming in a circle. And then you go De La Hiva, then you can go from De La Hiva back into single X or Ashley and back into X guard, and just blah, blah, blah. It just keeps going. And people seem to really like that, right? They're like, man, that's awesome, because it's coming full circle, right? But again, the problem is, like, I hope that everybody's there for all of them and they get to see that. And then but it's just not the case sometimes. It's a little frustrating, but that's the part of being a teacher, right? Because the example that happened last night, we had a beautiful class last night. To be honest, it was a good amount of people, but a lot of them were brand new. Like they couldn't, like, we're like pretty far into the material, right? And then all of a sudden they show up, and I'm like, well, you know, because usually I say, remember this one, like we're building on that one. And then of course I'm like, well, I guess you guys don't even know what we're talking about. You know, it's like, kind of make a joke out of it, and they caught up. It was fine. And I had to adjust a little bit, you know, but that's just one of those things. It's kind of rough, right? Like it's, you know, for teaching and for learning, you know, it's like if you miss a little bit, it kind of makes it hard for everybody. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. That's why we said it. And that's why I'm with you on the 1 to 2 to 3. I usually 3 is my goal. And if we get, to that, that's great. It depends again, how complicated the moves are. Sometimes their moves are very similar. So we can say, hey, just these are very similar and we can kind of drill it. But I am with you. I'm starting to lower stuff down for more drilling time, meaning I think I'm playing around with some ideals now, and it goes to where I think more time on more moves is where I need to do. And again, I'm always like playing around with stuff. There's not been an issue with stuff before. Clearly, we have guys that have been in there for 8 months and can beat, blues and purples. Like they're doing fine, but it's just like, can I do better? Okay, and that's where I'm at right now. It's like, I think maybe a little bit more time would be in there. And then just for example, because I want to talk about Lee Keaton was here. He, was on the podcast recently, and he came and I had him teach class. It was really cool. He did a couple, same thing. We did the half butterfly, the drilling, but he did another drill that I really liked at the end. I want to bring it up, but he said that's a drill that's really helped his guys. But it's just like, let's say that Ron or whoever, you guys are you're on your back, you're on the ground. The other guy is just walking up to you. That's all he does. There's no agenda. He just walks up, and then you get into whatever it is, and that's it. And then the other guy's not really trying to do anything. He's just trying to keep his balance so long as he can, and then you sweep him, but he's not really trying to break your grips or anything. But the whole drill is for the guy on the bottom to get into his entries. Right? Makes a lot of sense, right? And then as a top guy, you're just trying to keep your balance. So like if you're getting 3-foot swept or climbing swept, like now you're kind of trying to see where your posture should be and do all that. And he said it really helped his guys. And then coincidentally that night I saw a video from, I think his name's Malachi Friedman or something. He puts a lot of little videos on, and he said he had the same drill. He just called it something different. But he said, if you're not training your entries, you'll never get to your finishes. And so he had a guy walk up and he just like Ashley, boom, 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 deep half. It was just, which makes a lot of sense, so that you can kind of always incorporate that, even though you're not training that. And then that's how Lee did it. He's like, here, let's do 3 to 5 minutes with what I just did. Then the next 3 minutes is going to be that, right? They had 0 to do with that, but that way you're still getting it in every practice. And then another thing. And I mean, there's maybe a different way to do that, but I really enjoyed that drill. And then it was cool to get validation from, the guy that trains at Extreme Couture. But it's another new thing that I'm seeing people do. And again, I don't know if you guys are already doing something like that or not, but I really liked it. I thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah, that sounds like a great drill. And back to what you're saying, like I'm kind of lucky, and I only carry about, we have about 40 students on our roster. So we have a small school, so we're all kind of together. But when I do have people drop in and they're those upper belts, I do have to go over and maybe give them something else because we're on something super basic. But some of it, because it's the fundamentals, like it's some of it, I'll have upper belts drop in and it's maybe details that they've never seen before, even in those fundamentals. So it still seems to be really good for them. But it is hard when people miss. And that's why I kind of work it into the warm-up. So I'll do a real quick review. Hey, last time we did this and this is how we do it. Now get with somebody that knows how to do it, and we're going to warm up just to try to catch those people up. But it's funny that you say that about the entries, because I have, some people that I've trained elsewhere, and they'll come in and they're like, yeah, I was training wherever and we were learning some really cool stuff, but I'd be in these positions and I'd have no idea how I would even get there. So they were kind of missing that entry. Like they may be able to do some really advanced thing, but they have no idea how to ended up in that position anyway. So there was a little gap there. I do see that. So that's a great drill.
Yeah,
it comes back to, I was going to say that comes back to like flowing though, right? Like as far as like the drills that you're doing at the beginning, rather than doing the standard, hey, let's line up, we'll jog in a circle, everybody shrimps, everybody, the lunges, all that stuff. The flowing through the move kind of helps out. I think for me as a teacher, the biggest problem, and kind of echoing what Butch is saying, like people showing up, you have this, because I did it where I had this grand scheme where it was like, okay, we're going to start with this whole passing series, and it is going to be, if he does this, I go to 1, and if he does this, I go to 2, and if he does this, I go to 3. And then off of their response to 1, 2, and 3, 1 goes to this 1A, 1B, 1C. The problem is I've got people who come in for Monday night class only, but there might be 3 beginner classes. And the struggle that I had was, okay, well, I can't really teach it like that because now I don't feel like people are like getting a complete system of jiu-jitsu. So then I kind of changed the course setup where it was, when we come in, I know for this first block, it's all going to be from your closed guard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be, you know, a couple, as far as beginners classes, obviously advanced classes is a little bit different, but beginners classes, it's going to be a closed guard, and we're going to learn 2 techniques tonight, 2 techniques Wednesday, 2 techniques Friday. And then if you only make it to Monday and Friday and you miss Wednesday, it's not that big a deal because at least you have something from closed guard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then after a 2-week block, we move on to being inside someone's closed guard. And so they would, you know, maybe you're there for the night where you get the, you know, how to open guard, how to set in guard without being broken down. Or maybe you're there for the night where it's low pass, knee cut pass. Maybe you're there for the night where it's standing up in somebody's closed guard and how to break that open and get into headquarters. But at least you have some sort of answer. And I felt, for me, that was the best way to get somebody ready for rolling. And the reason is because, no, they didn't get a complete system in guard, like, you know, how to hand in the collar. I go for an arm bar. If they pull the arm bar out, I switch to triangle. Then I switch to the omoplata. They didn't get a whole system of that, but at least they have a tool. And then if they're not in guard, if they're in bottom side control, they've been around a little bit. So they got a bottom side control class, even though they're only in once or twice a week. And so that was my way of kind of like streamlining it. I wanted to have enough classes on guard that they would have something.
Right.
They're only a one time a week class. And I know that that is just a way to do it, is not the way to do it. And it's what I love about talking to everybody about this, is because maybe I can steal some of this, you know, and how you know, I a lot of times when I come into class and I'm teaching class, it's based on who's there as well. Like if I look around the room and I'll be like, okay, I know everybody's had this class, I can expand, or I can play with this curriculum a little bit, maybe give them a little more than I would just a standard class, but it is based on who's there. And it's a never ending, it's always going to be something that's difficult as far as like trying to find a way to teach everybody something without boring people, but also without overwhelming.
Sure. But I think you hit it right there. Like, I think that's a sign of a good instructor is I'm huge on, like, I always make a lesson plan. Like, no, I've been doing this. I mean, I've been teaching in combatives in some form or fashion since '98, and I still make lesson plans, but I'll have like a contingency. Like, okay, if everybody that I want to shows up, this is what I'm going to teach. If not, then I'll teach this. So they are all still getting something, but I have to be able to flex. And that's what I see a lot of times. Like, you have to be able to read the room. If you have this elaborate thing going on and then all these white belts show up and all your, like, no colored belts are there, maybe you don't continue to do that. But I see that happen a lot where people are like, well, this is what I'm teaching. It doesn't matter who's there. And I would rather teach to those white belts and have the colored belts go back and just practice down in the details on those fundamental things than make these white belts try to catch up. Because to me, it's all about, like, if I'm going to build a house, I need a really strong foundation. If I don't have a strong foundation, my house is going to fall apart. So if I start teaching people too much too fast and they don't understand the concepts of it or even how they got to the position, then they're going to have holes in their game. So I'd rather, like, hey, we're going to do these basic things. You blue belts and purple belts can do them also, because we can always go back and brush up on that stuff rather than try to speed up just to, and I don't have that many colored belts. I have a couple purple belts and my son is one of them, and he'll kind of just do what I tell him to do anyway, which is nice. But so I just try to, I want everybody in there to have a good foundation.
You know, I was thinking, like, while you're talking to that, because we kind of brushed, like we said, we talked about curriculum stuff, right, a little bit, or we could, everything we said kind of reminded me, like, why we should have a curriculum, which people probably would say, like, why, right? Or what? How do you get that out of what we just said? But what I was thinking was exactly what you said, like where somebody kind of misses a class or misses some moves. And that's why if you have a curriculum, like you have stuff to go back. Like if you're a little lost, you can go back and find some stuff. Like, and that's also as a written curriculum. A lot of people think they have a curriculum and they say they do, and maybe they have it in their head. I would argue that's not a curriculum, because the curriculum is like what the people, like when you come in to college, you get a syllabus, right? It tells you what you're going to do and all that stuff. That's essentially what we have. Like we have, Marcelo's curriculum, but it goes, white to blue, blue to purple, brown, brown to black, and then and so on. But it's like, that is the key. Like anytime somebody says, what should I be working on? Like instead of just saying, which normally people say they don't have such a curriculum, just be like, well, just keep rolling. Can I do this or do that? They don't really have an answer. You can say, well, yeah, you can just go to the white to blue, the blue to purple, and there's going to be stuff on there. And then, we can kind of tailor make it to. And I think if I was going to argue with what people, because I've seen it all, like for people, like you said, there's people that are like, it's either a hot topic, like people hate it or not, right? But most of the time, I think that I've heard where people don't like it, they, I hate to say it this way, it's like they don't know what they're talking about. Like, and of course, that's coming from somebody that follows criminal. But why I say that is because, like, the last time I've heard this from people are like, well, it's outdated, it's this, it's that. Like, then I was like, well, you're missing the point. It's like an outline for us to follow for exactly that reason. When somebody says, man, I'm having a hard time in closed guard, I'm having a hard time with lasso guard, I'm having this, like, okay, well, right there it is. Here's a bunch of moves. Follow these basic outline on your own, or ask your friends and do this, and then you know where to go. And then we expand upon that. Now, is there a bunch of new moves people know? Is there a buggy choke in the curriculum? No, there's not. Does it mean we can't do it because it's not on our curriculum? No, it's just that's another move that goes with the outline that we can throw in there. So anytime somebody says like, well, that's outdated, like, well, then you're dumb, right? Like, because just as like, that's not how that works, right? We have something to follow. It's like, it's the most ignorant statement every time I hear that. Or it's because, like Roy, we talked about this a little bit off camera, like earlier today, like I know that Roy Harris or Roy Dean have a curriculum. There's a bunch of people do. I think Hickson probably does, all these people. But if they made it today in 5 years, you would say that's old, right? Because then we're going to change, right? I mean, but that's not true. That's his outline. And here's what they think. This is kind of the general techniques you need as a white belt, the general techniques you as a blue belt, and then you can go follow that and then expand. Because the other thing is, like for us, for example, we're not trying to be Marcelo Monteiro or De La Riva, right? Like, Marcelo got that from De La Riva and Carlson. We're not trying, and nor is he trying to make us cookie cutters of the stuff. He's saying, here's what I think it is. This is what I've seen my training in Brazil. This is what I've seen in the tournaments at this particular time. And also that's his style of game. He likes a lot of open guard. He's a smaller guy, does this or that. Doesn't mean that's what we're going to do. Like, also, like, is Marcelo in there smash passing people like Gary does? No, because he don't do that. So it doesn't mean that curriculum sucks. He's like, here's the basic guard passes, and here's what I think you should know. And it's really basic. It's just like a basic closing guard and a standing passes. Most of his guard passes is basic. The rest you just go and build upon. But if you have those basics to start with, then you can tweak that, right? So I've never understood that. Like, why would you not want a bunch of moves you can go over? Why would you just want to go on YouTube and type pass closed guard? And then like whatever pops up, you're just hoping that works. Like, this guy's teaching it could be dog crap, right? Like, you don't know. Or it just doesn't, it's not necessarily fitting your game. Like, now we're in the day where everybody, which I love YouTube, I love it. And I love Instagram too. Like, I see clips of cool moves all the time, but we're in the day where all the newbies can come in and sometimes they're 100% right. Like I say, I've never done jiu-jitsu, and all of a sudden they do like a straight ankle lock. And you're like, I thought you never did jiu-jitsu. Like, well, I didn't, but I've watched this YouTube video a bunch and I play around with my friends. And then at first I didn't believe them, but I'm like, you can see the crappy technique eventually. And then you're like, because it's like when a white belt goes for straight ankle lock, they go crazy. And sometimes that's why, like, somebody at tab, they're like, I don't know what this guy's going to do. Like, he's just arching his back, freaking out, But anyway, that's why I think that every time I hear that, that's what people are missing out. Like, you should have some outline that you could just tell people to go. And, for ours, for example, we even had, like, I have another separate paper, which you guys have all seen, I'm sure, but the gym in South Africa, like, broke it down a little bit differently and let you check it off. So, and it's more like the one, thing when Marcelo made it, I didn't like, it's not a terrible thing. It just didn't flow very well, right? It would be like, here's this move. And then could be from closed guard, then next one's here, but it's because it's a collection of techniques for a white belt. It's maybe not flow. And the South African guys kind of made them flow a little bit better. I thought, like, here's all half guard, here's closed guard, here's that. And nonetheless, that's my thing. I don't know what you guys think, but that, I obviously when I ran on that, but I just think people are missing out if they're not doing that kind of stuff, right? We're always looking for shortcuts to get better. And if, one thing that I know Gary's big on is taking notes, right? And nobody does that either. So if you took notes and had a curriculum, you'd already be taking these you'd be like a super shortcut.
And the notes thing, like, it was funny because even Corey Sandhagen was on Joe Rogan not too long ago, and he had kind of brought up the notes thing, and then he had talked about Dwayne Ludwig and how he, like, as soon as he shows up wherever he goes, he's got a notebook and he can pull it out and be like, in this situation, this is the combination that I'm going to start throwing. For me, I don't know that notes, because honestly, sometimes, like, I go back and I look at my notes, but honestly, it's not even having the notes. It's the act of making the notes that helps me.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think that is something that's missed. There's something that happens when I'm tactile, and a lot of times I write them out. We've got phones and I type them out. And even when I'm typing them out, I don't think it's the same. There was something about when I handwrite notes and I'm putting it down pen to paper that it sinks in a little bit more. And I've done everything I can to get guys to take notes, and they won't listen to me. They'll never do it. So I went ahead and I even came up with, I've got a little pamphlet. It's like 70, 80 pages. It's got a place for notes in the back. It has the curriculum in the front. After every technique, it has a spot in it for people to, like, if I say something different than is in the notes that is there for an arm bar, then, like, if it clicks, if that's the key word that makes you think about it, then write that down in the notepad. Like, it's all there. I tried to make it as easy as possible for people to take notes, because there are sometimes I don't teach the class the same every time I teach it. Every time I teach it, when I'm teaching, a standard arm bar from mount, every time I teach that class, I say something a little bit different. It's no different than any conversation that you have, or I think, even like comedians, when they go up and they tell a joke, yeah, they're telling the same joke, but every night they deliver it a little bit different, a little less fat on the joke. They trim some words off that they don't need, or whatever it is. That way they can better do it. So if you come to class on Monday and I teach the same class again next Thursday, I might say something on the Thursday night class, even if you're at both classes, that hits different. Or it could be something that I taught on Monday, but then you go to Butch's class on Thursday, he's teaching the same move, and he'll say a word. He thinks about something that in a different way, or he uses a different phrase that makes sense to you. And it doesn't have to be my word. It's not my jiu-jitsu. This is your jiu-jitsu. Make it your jiu-jitsu however you have to. But part of that is writing it down and making notes. The other thing too is the process of notes and writing notes. It kind of, like, you get to explore your own vocabulary to find out what makes sense, because then you have to think about the move. All right, when I'm in mount, if they chest push me, bench press me up, and maybe the key term is CPR, because that's what hits me. It's like I put my hands on the chest, I do CPR. And then when I slide, I want to stick my knee in the ear, and then I'm going to walk the other leg, and I want to gumshoe. They have to, can my opponent see if there's gum on the bottom of my shoe? That's how I know I'm in a good S mount, right? And so all of these are the things that I've come up with by writing my notes, because it was taught to me, walk your foot up, slide your knee. But it didn't make sense until I came up with my own terminology to solidify that as far as my move. Because until then, it was somebody else's technique. It wasn't mine. When I come up with my own terminology, when I write my notes, then it becomes mine, because I have to think about how I would say it and how I would give this information to somebody else. And that's the important thing for me about note taking. I get super excited about it, and I'll shut up now. Ron, it's your turn. I don't know how important notes are about you, but
same thing. I've been taking notes. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of notebooks, and I'm constantly doing the same thing. Like, hey, people, take notes. You're not going to remember all this. So that's awesome. But I think like what you're saying, Butch, is like that, it's all about that foundation. And that's what the curriculum is to me. It's a foundation. It doesn't mean I can't start building off of that foundation and teaching other stuff. And I think when I talk to people about it, they think like the curriculum police are going to show, like Butch is going to show up and like, what are you doing? You're teaching something other than this. I'm like, that's not it. Like it's still your school, and you make that curriculum yours, and you chain and branch what you want off of it. But it's that foundational skill. Like I know at least that all my guys know this stuff. They're going to know more than that, of course, but the more than that might be like, this guy didn't get it because he wasn't here, but I know he's going to have this core stuff. And what I've done in my school with just the nice software that's out there now is I started recording all the classes, and I hang them on my website so that if somebody does miss, they don't have to come back later and say, hey, I missed, the De La Riva helicopter sweep. Can you show me what that is? Like, it's already on there. They just go on there, they find it, they click on it, they can watch the class. But where do you drive? Like if you're going to drive somewhere, you don't just be like, I think I'm going to drive to California today, but I'm not going to use any maps, or I'm not going to use a GPS. I hope I can find my way. We don't do that, right? We have a map, we have a GPS, something that tells us how to get from point A to point B. And to me, like that's what a curriculum does. Like, hey, we're going to go down this path. We're going to take some turns, and we're going to go off road, and we're going to do all this other stuff. But at the end, like we went on this path, and this is the foundational stuff that you're going to know. And you just make it your own. And like Butch was saying, like, yeah, some of that stuff at the time he wrote it, maybe it flowed well. Maybe to me, it flows well. To Gary, it doesn't. So he just modifies it to make it flow for how he's teaching in his school and his environment, because everybody has different students, different learning abilities, different body types, all that kind of stuff that you have to factor in as an instructor. But it doesn't mean that foundationally we can't build a good foundation with a curriculum.
Yeah, no, and that's excellently or perfectly put. I mean, it's I don't know. It's the same reason people are fighting note taking, right? Like do you go to college and don't take notes? Like, no, because you're not going to do good on the test, right? It's the same thing. You got to do it. And then Gary, like what you're saying too, is 100%. I wish I knew what the study was called, but they have a study that tells you like putting actual pen or pencil to paper and writing down is essential in remembering stuff. Before I even knew that, just inadvertently, coincidentally, whatever it was, I was doing the same thing in college. Like when I had a break, between classes, I would go to the library and I would study. And at first I was highlighting the book, right? I would read a book, my book, and I would highlight all this stuff. That did nothing for remembering. I just had a book filled with yellow, right? Like, and that was, so it was like a red, and I did this, but it didn't do nothing. But then I literally was like rewriting the sentences. And sometimes I would go back and study, of course, what I wrote. That's actually most of the time, but it's the same, that writing and saying it again in my head and taking the time to actually write it, which takes a little bit of effort. All of a sudden it was like stuck in there. So like, then when I go study, it's like those words were coming out of my head before I could even, finish the sentence, right? And there's something about that process, because I guess it's almost like having a photographic memory, but it's not. But I can picture myself writing that word down, or that question, or that phrase. And then that's an extra step, right? Like, I don't know what that's called. I mean, somebody smart probably does, but you know what I'm saying? That really extra step. And that's like a cheat code. It really is. I could sit and stare at a book all day. But if you're not writing that down, to me, I mean, there's people that can do it for sure. But that little bit of writing stuff down is a big deal.
Well, and the way I discovered
Gary hit
it
a
for
huge
me,
point there. Sorry, go.
Oh, I was going to say the way I discovered it for me is like when I was in high school, I would write flashcards. And there were also flashcards that were already pre-made. And I found that when I used the pre-made flashcards, like I could read the flashcard and flip it over and read the answer, and then go to the next flashcard and read the flashcard and flip it over. But it never sunk in. But when I started making my own, I would get like the little index cards and write it down and make my own flashcards. I didn't need the flashcards anymore. The act of writing it, making my own flashcards, is how I remembered it. So and that's how I stumbled upon it, was if I really needed, same thing with like lyrics. I was in a couple bands and we did covers. And I could listen to a song 100 times and it didn't matter what song it was, it would never sink in. But when I would sit down and I would hit play on the song and stop, write down that verse, hit play, write down the verse. I didn't need the lyrics anymore. I could throw the lyrics away because the act of writing it down was how I remembered it. And it kind of goes back to everybody learns different, but that's, for me, that's what made it sink in. Ron, you were going to say.
No, you hit a huge point too. I think it's that mental process of writing it down and having to recall all those steps to that technique that you're writing down. Because now you're having to process that information, recall it, think back on it. Hey, how would I say that? Oh, the gumshoe. Like now, just like you said, you're putting it into your own words because, you know, even as I teach every day, like I might be on the range teaching somebody to shoot and I say this and I can see they're not getting it. And so I'll call another instructor over and I'll be like, hey, can you tell them this? Well, they may say it in a totally, they're saying the same thing, but they may word it in a different way or say it in a different way. And the person gets it. And I'm like, I don't get mad. I just want the person to get the information. Because I think that's a huge part of being an instructor too. And, you know, Butch has helped me out so much over the years that I think it's my responsibility to pass this on to somebody else. And I want to do it in the best way that I know how to get that information across to them as efficiently as possible. And that's another reason why I love the curriculum and I keep that simple teaching style, not overwhelming people with a whole bunch of techniques, because I want to make it as efficient as possible. And you want them to go through all the same things you did, but there's a lot of things that I had to learn on my own along the way. Because, you know, coming up, I was in the military the whole time. Even though I was on Butch's team, I was never really there that much. And so I would have to learn a lot of stuff on my own. And so I just try to save people like kind of those shortcuts. Like, hey, if you do this, that won't happen to you. And I know that because it happened to me thousands of times before I figured it out, you know. So there's just so many cool things about being an instructor. But to me, it all goes back to that. The foundation of having that curriculum just makes everything so much more efficient.
Here's another random thought that I was thinking. It's not really random. I guess that's not the right thing to say, but a thought that I thought, and none of this, the thought, like, you know, that's not going to work out, but it is kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking of a thought, but as you were saying some stuff, this is, I'll get to the meat of this question or this statement here in a second, but there's one thing that you taught me a long time ago that I need to do better at, that you went with this note-taking thing that we're talking about. So it's not random. That's why I was saying it's not random, but, and I don't know what you call it. It may be just debriefing. I'm not sure. You mentioned it. You said you guys do it in the military. I'll get to the point here in a second. I also listened to many Jocko podcasts of his books, right? Extreme Ownership, all that. And they talk about doing the same process, but it's you know, I think we specifically talked about it as far as a tournament, right? So at the end of the tournament, you know, say we run a WVG, at the end of the tournament, you sit down and you write, would you call that a debrief? But you write what went good, what went bad,
Yeah.
what could go better, right?
Yeah.
So what do you call that?
So
That
like
process?
like an after action report. So, you know, we say we get together before the tournament, me, you and Gary, like, hey, this is what we were going to do. Gary, you make sure all the referees are good. Ron, you make sure people don't, you know, people are taken care of so I can do the bracketing, whatever. We run the tournament. And as we go through, whether we're taking mental notes or we're putting it down on paper, like, hey, man, I didn't really liaison too good with people and they were coming over to you and bothering you the whole time. Like, I messed that up, or whatever problems that we had during the tournament, right? And then at the end, we just do a little after action. Like, we get together and we say, hey, next time, maybe we should get some cones and some ropes to keep people off of the mat area. You know, whatever it is that we could have done better. Because what happens is, like, we get with whatever it is that we're doing, we get done and we're like, ooh, okay, let's go have a beer and eat some food. And then we never go back and revisit, like, what went good, what went bad, what could we do better for next time. And then we're just kind of stuck in the same thing over and over and over, and we never improve what we're doing.
Do you have, like, is that a template that you guys follow? Or is it just that simple that, you know, those are the three things you got to do? Or is there something like how does that, or is that like something like your, I don't, I don't know the class in military, but let's say you're a sergeant, right? Because I'm just going to use a generic thing. He's like, hey, like at the end of this, I need you to write this report. So is that kind of a deal, or is it just how is that ingrained into you guys in the military?
So it was something that we always did in the military. The kind of the template that we use is just topic, discussion, recommendation. Whatever the topic is that we're talking about, and we're going to discuss like the goods and the bads of it, and then we're going to recommend, hey, we're going to keep doing this because this was awesome. We kind of messed this up. We could have done a little better here, and here's how we could have done, but not just like, hey, it was stupid, so we're not going to do that anymore. Well, what steps are we going to take to mitigate those things that went wrong for us? And I still do it in my job working for the government today. When I teach the topics that I have to teach for who I work for now, at the end of it, say we're doing the Special Operations Combatives program. At the end of it, like I have all the students write a end of course critique on us as instructors. And then I do an end of course report on how that course went. What could we do better? What could we make more efficient? Where did we lose time? Did we teach too many techniques? All of that. And then I take what the students say and bounce it off of what we said. And then that's how we keep streamlining and making, whatever event that it is that we're doing, we make it better like that way. Instead of just like, okay, it's over. Like, let's move on to the next one.
I like that idea. Like, for example, in the books, like I don't listen to Jocko's podcast because he reads books all the time, and I don't like that. But I like when he writes a book. I don't like when he reads one to me about, I don't even know what's going on half the time. But anyway, like, and the reason I like him too is because he's formed a company, and he goes into the corporate world, which is what I'm in. And honestly, like a lot of times, like when we have national sales meetings, national meetings, they have guys like him in, sometimes for motivational speakers, right? A lot of times it's Navy SEALs for whatever reason, it's like the hot thing, but the other times like he's there, or like a person like that. And it's to do what that is, like, why is your company having this problem? And it's a simple like it literally is that simple. There's sometimes from what I've read his book and his examples, it's a little different, but it's like, that's the core of it. They'll say like, okay, let's do this first. And then when they find a problem, then they try to get to the bottom of the front, but it's all like through military type things. And it's, sometimes it's taken like the heart, because I think when you're not in the military, like you're running a company, you're like, well, Joe's my friend. Like Joe really sucks at his job, but like he's got a family, he's got this and do that. And then a guy like Jocko will come in and be like, I know you like Joe, but like, Joe's a cancer, like he's your friend, but because you've kept Joe on, 6 people have quit, and you're losing $100,000 a year, and you're going to have to make this hard decision. I don't know you want to do it, but this is what you got to do, and blah, blah. And this is what we would do in the military, because if we kept Joe on at the military, then all of the team might die. Right. So, and like when you put it in the death thing, like people, oh shit, like I need to get rid of Joe. But when you're talking about like, sometimes your company, for some reason, you don't want your company to live or die. You don't want it to die. I mean, you want it to live, but like you kind of forget, and you're like, well, Joe's really important to me. And because I like Joe, he's going to ruin my life. And I'm not really thinking of it like that. Right. Like, and so I really enjoy that, because then not that anything you said ever, I don't mean it in a bad way, I was going to say, but it gives validity, I think, because we know that the U.S. military is very efficient, for what I know on the outside of not being in the military, at least on those things. I think that it's tried and true methods of all these little things, like that little thing of what went good, what went bad, and what went better could literally be used. And that's why I brought it up during your note taking at the end of jiu-jitsu. Like, today I worked closed guard. Here's what went well. Here's what went bad. Here's what I think I can do to fix that. And then the act of writing that down will probably make you remember the next time you come in, as opposed to like just driving home and thinking about it. You're probably going to forget by the next time you're there, if you're not there like right away,
Yeah, but I mean, a long time ago, we had talked about this, and you were like, you used to get caught in something, and the whole drive home, you would be thinking about it, right? So you're not putting it on paper, but you're doing that after action report in your head for that role. You know what I mean? So that's good. But it can just apply to so many things. It's like one of the reasons that running a gym is hard is because like Joe being that cancer, if you have one of those in your gym, that can really affect the whole morale and the culture of your gym, right? So sometimes you have to have that tough love to pull that guy aside and be like, hey man, you're kind of affecting the way this thing's going, and it's not going down a road I want it to go down. So we either need to fix it or you got to go. And that's why another reason I wanted to keep my gym small. So like we do a week free trial, and I tell people like, hey, this is for you to see if you like us, and this is for see if we like you too. Because if we don't mesh, hey, no big deal. I'll point you in another direction. But I think, I definitely do the after action, every time I teach, like, hey, and I'll bounce stuff off, my son or other coaches, like, hey, how did this go? What could I streamline? What could I make better? Instead of just walking out and being like, class is over, see you at the next one. I think it's really important. And there's a lot of things that, military, good or bad. I mean, there's some things that they do really good, and there's some things they could probably do better, but there is a lot of those teaching points in there that we could use in everyday life, just, to try to make us better. And that's one of them for sure, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if you have heard, I mean, you might have heard something similar, Gary, or not, but that really struck me. I'm not around obviously I saw you recognized it when I was saying it, right? Like that we talked about that before, but obviously I never forgot, right? It doesn't, I'll be honest, doesn't mean I do it all the time, but that's part of me being honest. Like I am slightly lazy, so I do my best, right? Like it's so funny because like I am lazy on things that are good for me. I'm not like I am busy all day, but 90% of the stuff I do, I feel like I'm doing for other people. Right. Of course it does for me, but when it comes to like the simple things, all the things that we just said, that's going to make me a better person, a lot of times I skip that stuff and then I just do podcasts about it instead. It's kind of weird. Like we'll get it eventually, but no, I mean, it's important. Like, again, even these podcasts really, like, it is for me a little bit, but still for other people. Like this is, we're taking this time out, and I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but like I feel like a lot of this stuff is like I'm talking about stuff I'm very interested in, but I'm talking about it because I feel like the same thing. I feel like the three of us or whoever's on here can help other people. Like I'm in the business of helping people. I don't know why. Sometimes I don't. And actually, this leads me into the next thing I want to say. Is I thought about this in the drive today. Is like, why am I in this business of helping people? My other job too is a hospital. I'm work with surgery and helping people. That's all I do. But I don't know what brought it up or whatever, but I was just, I've got these long drives a lot of times, but I was thinking like I wanted specifically for this podcast, I wanted to say, what brought you guys to coaching? What led you to believe, okay, because it's a weird thing, like to know that now it's your calling, because at this point, whether you believe in God or whatever, this is our calling, because this is what our path is. And this is how we're going to live a good portion of our life. If not the good portion to the end of our life, is going to be helping people and passing on, just like you said, like giving back. Right. And, for that, I'll give you a little example on mine, because I thought about I was driving, and it's hard. I had more time than you guys. And I'm giving you a little break to think about it. So this is why I'm doing it this way, but I had a little bit more time than you guys, so I'll give you time to think. But I can remember like when I first started learning boxing, it was before jiu-jitsu. So, I think I told my dad like, hey, I want to box, because especially that's all there was. I think about that time, actually, it was UFC, maybe come out in 93. So this is probably in that range, probably the 90s. But it just so happened my dad's friend was a boxing trainer. So he's like, I got the guy with you, for you. He was in the Marines with me, he'll come down. So he started showing me to box, and it was just me and him. It's more like a private kind of night. He'd come to the house and we do some stuff. And I mean, he was old school. Like I spent more time doing weird stuff than doing stuff that you would see today, meaning I laid on my back and threw like punches and made sure I rotated over my fist. And then he was like, pick a dot on the ceiling and make sure your knuckle hits it, and do this over and over. So I do that. And then he'd come in and maybe show me some footwork and how to bounce back and forth, like very simple. It was almost like Mr. Miyagi, like you're waxing a car, then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're blocking punches, right? It was like kind of that deal. It's like, I was like, man, I want to box. I want to punch somebody, right? Like, and I'm doing this weird shit, which eventually worked out. But anyway, like while he's showing me that, then my friends are like, well, you learn to box? That's cool, man. Like, what do you learn? So like, I'm essentially re-showing everybody what that guy's teaching me without, I don't even know why. Just, I wasn't trying to hide it or nothing, but then they'd be like, oh, cool. And then all of a sudden, like I have my own boxing thing. Wasn't on purpose. It was just like, 5 or 6 of my friends came over and they're like, yeah, like show me what you're doing. So I'm like essentially now teaching them with zero knowledge, right? And it turns out like that's like I had a knack for it and I enjoyed it and people loved it and I liked learning, and then it just kept growing. So every time I would learn something, I would just share it with other people. And there was nothing. I was like, man, we'll all do it. We'll all get together. I wasn't trying to be the best one of the group, like, and I think essentially some people are better than me because they're better athletes in that time. But what I realized is I really actually liked helping people, like showing people. I got some kind of little charge out of that. And then the same thing happened, like later in life, learning jiu-jitsu, like, because of course you need training partners. So I'd find somebody like, hey man, you want to like roll around with me? And they'd be like, what's that? That sounds gay. It's like, well, it's, it is kind of gay, but let's go see, we'll just keep our clothes on, and then off we go. We're doing that. We're learning moves together. And then same thing. Then I've got, I remember having a mat in my basement, it started with like 1 or 2 people, and then it was 5 or 6. And I was like, hey man, like we need to get like a bigger space and we'll all chip in and pay rent together. That way it wasn't me owning a business. It was like us chipping in, and then it formed to what it was. But I didn't even know that I wanted to be coach, nor did I ever think I was a leader. I thought for sure I was not a leader. I didn't even remember going to work and then being put in like in a leadership program. And I'm like, I'm not that. Like, I'm definitely not a leader. And then like, they were the ones like, what are you talking about? Like, you have like a gym, you got this. I'm like, well, I don't want to be that. And they're like, what doesn't matter? That's like what you are. Like, people follow you around. So like, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I just embraced it. I was like, well, we might as well go with this thing. Right. And then now I'm still tweaking it and trying to figure out, all that thing. But the bottom line is that I guess the emerging topic or thing is that there must be a definite love to show people and make people as good as they can be and better, right? And there's nothing, we've all talked about, there's nothing better than watching a person that you've shown, especially if they compete, like it really gives you a kick, like that person just won with the things that you showed them or whatever. You can put it in your mind a certain way, and then all of a sudden it's just, there's nothing like it, right? And then here I am today, right? But that's how that started. I don't know if you guys have, or you can remember, now that I stalled for you, your origin story, but what do you guys think?
I'm just an ultimate mansplainer.
Yeah.
I just
do you
mansplain
spread as well? Do you spread your legs really wide?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm full of toxic masculinity and I just mansplain everything to everybody. No, I think for whatever reason, I've been blessed with a way of conveying information that I know. And I don't know everything, but what I do know, I can transmit that information pretty well. And I've always been really good about coming up with similes or metaphors that make sense. I'm pretty good at putting things in a easy order for people to take in. And I think because of that, when I would get asked a question, I was able to transfer that information to them pretty easy. And so for me, outside of the joy that comes from teaching and people getting something and understanding it, for me, it was kind of easy to give the knowledge that I knew. If I knew something, I've always had a pretty easy time of explaining it in a way that anybody can learn it, whether it be, a 5-year-old kid or a 90-year-old person. Like I'm able to transmit that information fairly clearly. Probably because I'm not that smart, I can dumb it down really quick to its simplest form. And because of that, when it comes to the simplest stuff, I'm really good at teaching those classes. I don't know that I'm a great instructor when it comes to complicated stuff. I need to watch a lot more of the Squid Guard and stuff by Keenan Cornelius before I could even think about that stuff, because I remember watching a Keenan Cornelius video and he was talking about a basic Squid Guard technique. And like 45 seconds into it, he had already said like 9 different steps or 10 different steps. And I was like, man, I don't know that I could ever learn this. I'm not smart enough to learn that. But if something can be simplified into squeeze here, turn there, lean that, then I can convey that information pretty well. So, and we've kind of talked about it before, but teaching kind of found me. I didn't find teaching. I just, for whatever reason, jiu-jitsu was I probably got some form of OCD And for whatever reason, a lot of stuff, it'll get me, it catches my interest. I'm on it for 6 months and then I'll let it go. And I've done that with a lot of things, whether it be like I learned how to sew, and I learned how to make my own craft beer, and I learned, like, I've had a whole bunch of different hobbies. Jiu-jitsu was the one that just didn't leave. All of the other ones, they lasted, 6 months, maybe a year, and then I'd forget about them. And jiu-jitsu was the one that kind of stuck. Even guitar, like I love playing guitar and I've been in a couple bands, but that's even like one of those things where it's kind of fun. But after I learned the fundamentals, I'm kind of done with it. And jiu-jitsu, I never got done with it. So that's what kept me in. And then as far as like teaching, it was like I said, it was accidental. I love teaching people. And I love sharing the information that I have. The only thing that I think that stands out as far as a teacher for me is that I'm really good at conveying that information.
Well, and I was thinking that's super important while you said that, because I'm in a world where outside of jiu-jitsu, I'm surrounded by physicians, right? And sometimes I have to teach them, and they go out and teach, the same things that I taught them. They teach them to other people or tell why the product's good, right? They're called KOLs, or basically thought leaders of the industry, right? And they go out. What makes a good thought leader is not a smart guy, right? There's a ton of smart doctors, right? Like, to think about them. What makes a good thought leader is the guy that can talk just like we're talking right now, right? I've noticed this since I was young. So I like the way you put it, Gary, is and this is what I noticed about Rorion Gracie and now Henner and them, is they just use these beautiful metaphors that you're like, man, like I get it. And then it's just like, it does something to you. And if you can do a good one, like for example, again, it goes back to the doctor world, but one of my friends that I work with now, he admitted it too. He's like, I don't know why it is, but I'm just really good at saying weird stuff, like how it fits together. Like, like for example, I was at a meeting with them recently, and the product we use it's called, like, people bend over a lot, so it's called shopping cart syndrome, because people need to lean on a shopping cart to relieve the pressure in their back, right? But that's how he said immediately. We're in a room full of people that aren't doctors and don't have a huge vocabulary in that, and he said, how many people went to Walmart and saw somebody walking around bent over on a shopping cart having a hard time walking? The whole place raised their hand, and then boom, everybody was engaged and on, and then it was beautiful, right? Or where somebody else could have came in and said, well, this device, it really targets somebody that has some back pain, that kind of got to lean over. It's just very informational heavy, and you either pay attention or you don't pay attention, right? And again, since I was on a cruise with Rorion and Henner, even when Henner was a kid, and we knew right off the bat, like we said, that kid's going to be a salesman, just because he was just like, ah. And I don't know if you guys watched, not to go on and on about that, but if you watched him on Shark Tank, whether you like Henner or not, just about that goofy ass sweater that turns into a book bag or whatever the hell it is, he was just so engaging. Yeah, and it was just the way he was. So they were all like laughing and talking, and of course they all were bidding on it. Like, if I went up and sold a sweatshirt that didn't turn into anything, people were like, dude, get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you doing, right? But he was like, who's been out there in a cold day and just blah blah blah, and you're like, and then it got hot. What do? Do you go like this? You do, it's like, man, he was on it, So again, I think you're right. I think there is a thing about conveying knowledge, but just because you're good at conveying knowledge doesn't mean that is their passion, right? There has to be, again, that is your skill, that's your superpower, but you still got to love it to give somebody your superpower, right? Like, Superman has superpowers, but he don't have to save people. He could just sit at home and light his house on fire, right? And smoke some cigars, but do something like that. Like, but he's out there doing it, and that's you guys, man. So what do you think, Ron? It's hard to think about this stuff, isn't it? But obviously we're all here. So we're here.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a long story for me. I don't want to draw the podcast out and keep you guys late, but like, I got sent to my first kind of instructor course in probably 98, and they kind of say, hey, you're going to this, and you don't know if you're gonna be able to teach or not. And back then we had the close combat instructor course. And so that's kind of was my introduction to rolling and fighting a little bit. And then, you know, after that, you go back to your unit, and then you're kind of responsible for teaching the stuff to people. And I just really liked teaching it. And then, you know, I found myself able to run a schoolhouse in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I got to teach there for 3 years and run people through, you know, the military program there that I was running. And I really enjoyed teaching, but I never really talked about this with anybody. But one thing, when I was coming up in the Marine Corps, it was definitely different than today. And every generation kind of says that, but you know, I also learned some bad teaching habits. Like I had a lot of ego, and you know, probably wasn't the best instructor at that time. And because the instructors that had taught me just kind of beat stuff in your head, you know, and it would go a little hands-on, and you know, it would get kind of rough. And when you're raised up in that, what do? Well, you just keep doing that and passing it on. And you talk about like Jocko and the extreme ownership stuff. Like I never really experienced any of that sort of leadership when I was in. It was kind of the other side. Like you're just going to shut up and you're going to do it, or like stuff's going to happen to you. And so then I found myself kind of taking on that. And then I got in a position where I ran a military program for that entire branch of the military. And I got myself into some trouble there with some of that kind of ego and just kind of butting heads with some people. And, you know, so I ended up getting out. And actually at one point when I got out, I took all my gear, my gis, everything. I gave everything away. I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing it anymore. I didn't want anything to do with the military. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to like horseshoeing school. I was shoeing horses for a while, but I really like, I missed it. Like I felt like something was missing inside, but I knew I just needed to do it different. And so I started training again, and found a place to teach. And I just said I was going to do it different. And I really, that like jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and everything that I was doing got really fun at that point. Like once I was able to let that ego go and just learn and then pass that on to other people, like in a healthy manner, I found a whole new passion for it. And that kind of led me, you know, to wanting to teach. And then, you know, I got a job teaching, you know, for the Navy, and I stayed there a couple of years. And then I went over to, you know, where I'm at now in the government. And then that led to opening my own school, where like I have a whole entirely different philosophy on teaching now than I did before. Like, as you know, Butch, like back in the day, it was like you go on the mat, you have to win. You know what I mean? There was no like, oh, it's okay, I'm going to let somebody do this or do that. I'm Gary, I'm sure it's probably the same for you when you first started like long ago, but like, no, I have to win, like at all costs. Like, I don't care. You know, and I remember like even coming to some of the guys at your gym when I first went to your gym at the Mound, you know, there are some heavy like sparring, like jiu-jitsu sessions in there. Once I got all past that, kind of to where we're at now on the healthier side of things, it just really brought my passion out for teaching and kind of letting people know that you don't have to be that way. You know, you don't have to be this hardcore person that has to tap everybody out all the time and like, no, I can't lose to a lower belt or whatever. Like, no, jiu-jitsu works. Like if this blue belt or whatever gets me in an arm bar, and maybe like I'm just practicing my arm bar escape and I give him my arm, I might have gave him my arm, but if it gets to a certain point and I don't get out, like jiu-jitsu works, I'm going to have to tap or my arm's going to break, and that's okay. You know, it doesn't matter. Like I'm going to tap, my arm's going to be still intact, and we're going to keep going. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, Butch didn't show up and take my belt from me because some guy tapped me because I didn't do the escape in time. But it took me many, many, many years to kind of reach that point. And that's when I really found the passion in teaching and in jiu-jitsu. And I know that's like a long-winded answer, but I've never really told anybody that before.
I think that's a good answer,
really
actually.
life at that time. So
yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful answer, because I think here's what I think is, it's weird how we all change things, right? Like, meaning, obviously you mentioned I was the exact same person, right? And I used to think, I heard people say this today, my friends actually, that jujitsu is not for everybody, right? Like, I think, Gary, did we talk about this one time on there?
Yeah, we've had conversations about this. Is jujitsu for everybody? Yeah.
And you're right, Rod. So when you taught on your terms at one time, and me too, and that, I don't know about you, Gary, I think maybe you came up in a better environment, but like, there was a time where we're like, just the strong survive, right? And then you learn through kind of what we just said, like early in the other stuff, like you lose friendships, right? You lose things, and you have some good people that come through the gym, and you lose them, right? And it always hurts every time I lose somebody, not because I'm like jealous they quit or went to a different gym or something, but it's like it hurts because you put a lot of time and effort in a person you really care about, right? And then they're gone. And then of course we care about our gym, we care about this stuff. That's why it hurts, right? Like, it's we put a lot into the teaching, and to our gyms, and to our quote unquote students. We know that I don't like that word, but you know what I'm saying. And then you change, and so now I'm with you now. Like, it's what I agree. It's a hard thing to say, and like the same thing with me. It's like, I think, at my gym, Benji, a good friend of mine, he came up early in that thing, and he mentions it a lot. Like, he'll say, man, these people today wouldn't have survived before. They don't know what it's like. And that actually kind of hurts my feelings. And weird, like, it's fun to talk about, but also think, man, what an asshole like I was, like, or that. And so now that's what I think. It's like, like, I want my gym to be for everybody, right? So I think the reason I say that, I think as a beautiful thing, like, I think you should be proud, Ron, like, because we're getting to be better people, right? And we're not the same person we were before. And that kind of, like, Joe Rogan talks about that all the time. Like, and I think that's what's made his podcast so popular and everything. Cause it's like what I said 10 years ago is not who I am today. How I acted like, I'm not the same person. We can't judge people like that way. And we're continuing to learn and change and evolve, and it's crazy. But I think personally, if I was looking for an instructor, I mean, you would be the one, Ron, because that's like, for somebody to come and say, hey man, like, I made mistakes and here I am, and I gave everything up and I was done. And because I have a similar story. There's a time I had a couple guys, I'll even mention their name, Billy Ash, he's not around anymore. He died, and Adam Sepulveda. But I think they got in a fight on the street, and it tore our gym apart, right? There's two egos got away of each other and ended up fighting, and we lost our gym. It was just a lot of drama. And, I walked away too. I remember I was done. Wasn't ever going to do it again. And I was doing MRI, and I got a random phone call from a random guy that met me at a gym that I wasn't even that great of friends with. And he said, hey man, like, I met these doctors. They want to take privates. I thought of you, you could make some money. So that's kind of like, to be honest, that's what got my attention, was the money. Right. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I really, he's like, man, they're not assholes. It's not like the other guys that you just went with. I know what you went through. These are doctors. I think you'd like it. He talked me into it. And I did. They were a different group of people. They weren't what I was, they weren't the fighters. Right. And so like, I got to experience that, where there was now these people that were truly thankful that they were learning jiu-jitsu, and they were cool. Like, they were like, I know, like, and I'll be, one of them was Bowman. That was what, the guys, Rick Bowman. Yeah. I remember going to his basement, and he's still a badass when he was a nobody, but he was like, I know it might take me 10 years to get a blue belt, but that's okay. I'm in there for the long haul, and I was like, well, this guy's cool. I mean, he's still like crazy good, right? But I was like, he's not, he just knows. He's like, I'm a dog. I don't want to get hurt. And then, Bowman's, it's funny. He says, we know a different side of Bowman. So it's kind of funny that I'm using him for it, but he's the real guy that I was like, okay. And then I kept showing up, and he, I think, really, honestly, I never really thought about it either, but I think he might be the one that kind of changed me through better. I just knew when I opened the gym again, if I did, and I didn't think I was going to, but things were going to be different, and they were. And that's also why I have like a lot of respect for Marcelo, because he stuck with me during that time where I shut my gym down. He didn't have to talk to me, because it was like, I don't think I was I definitely wasn't a black belt at the time. Maybe it was like purple or brown, but he came and rolled with me at my house, like flew to West Virginia and like just would like, and actually the same guy was my friend Lee. He put some mats in his basement. We'd train, and Marcel would show up and we'd train in my friend's basement, and like nothing. Every now and then he'd say, "You should open a gym again." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." Like, and then like so little by little, we did, but that's the point too. It taught me some things. And then also you kind of learn who your real friends are, because there's certain people that stuck with me during that time and then certain people that didn't. But I also didn't blame them for not sticking with me, because I was like, dude, I was a mess too. Like, it doesn't mean you're an asshole for not sticking with me. If I'm going to be honest, like maybe I wouldn't have stuck with me either. Right. And so like, you had to do some reflecting, and same thing. It's just like, if you're honest with yourself, I was like, I'm a work in progress. And I think that's why, like, we're talking about this stuff now, like ever since that day, I'm going to continue to be like a work in progress. And then, hopefully talk to like-minded people, and we can all be better people, so anyway, yeah, I think that's awesome. Ron, I think that's, for saying all that stuff too. It's like, I hate to say it like this way, because it sounds kind of girly, but I say it's like a brave thing to say, right? Because it's hard to talk about yourself and do all that stuff. And I don't mean that weird way, but I mean, I think you know what I'm saying. I think it's rough, right? To say like, hey, we made mistakes, but I think that's the big thing. Like every time, again, Benji and I at the gym, I won't get in the conversation, but we were just talking about some people, some stupid things they did the other day. I think you were involved in that conversation, but
yeah.
I also had to bring up, hey man, I've done that same stuff. The difference was like, I learned from my mistakes and I'll never do it again. And if that person's doing that a bunch and not becoming a different person, that maybe not a person you want to be around, and we had to talk through that, stuff too. But I said it multiple times, like, I'm not going to sit and just talk trash about this person, because I also have to own up to, like, I've done similar things, some bad mistakes at my time, so, but yeah, anyway, it's crazy.
Yeah. And it was a hard part, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me too, because it shaped me, to go a different route. And I definitely needed to go a different route. So sometimes you just need that kick in the ass to get there. And that's what it did for me. And just while we're on here, I have to, say thank you to you, because you also never left when that stuff was going on. And, we've been hanging out for, 23 years now, and you've definitely been a huge part of my life that has helped me out a lot. So, I really appreciate you and your family for everything you've done too.
I think 23 years is a crazy number in it, because like now I've got people at my gym that kick my ass that are not even 23, It's like really weird. Like, I think I was wrong with some people the other day, and I was like, asked when he was born. He said 1997. I was like, dear God, like, it's so embarrassing. Like, I was like, I already graduated from high school, like, probably in college. Well, I was definitely, I think in 1997, I was fighting in like the Golden Gloves championship in college, and this little sucker is just being born, and now he's like trying to tear my head off, something about being old.
Get so fast now with all the information and everything that's out there. I mean, when I met you, I think you were a blue belt, and I had never seen a blue belt before, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this guy's a blue belt, he's gonna kill me, so it's just wild where it's all come around.
I remember those days. I remember too, because I remember thinking about it. I remember all the, like, you guys remember the Underground or mixedmartialarts.com or whatever the heck it's called. You remember that? But I remember there'd always be these stories where they're like, a blue belt could beat Mike Tyson, a blue belt could beat, Floyd Mayweather, whatever. And then when I got my blue belt, I was like, yeah, I'd crush Mike Tyson, like all this stuff. Like, I truly believed all that. I was like, thank God I never saw him or started to fight with him. Not that would happen, but like, that's what people thought back then. Like, a blue belt to us was legendary. It was, and it's so different now. And now, I took seminars from blue belts, for $75, and I was thankful to do it. And quite honestly, I learned a bunch from those two blue belts. There's Chris Blanky, who's a black belt, a solo guy, and Paul Creighton, who fought in the UFC, who's a black belt, and Renzo Gracie, but both blue belts. And I learned a little bit, I probably wasn't good enough to even learn, it's not that they didn't teach good, because I remember I think it was Chris, and obviously it's one of them, but they're like, don't let anybody grab your head. Like, there's nothing good that comes from somebody grabbing your head. And it was like, whoa, that's revolutionary, because I let everybody grab my head. Like, I never thought about, I was like, holy shit. Then it really, to this day, I probably repeat that. And, that was in the 90s or, probably early 2000s. But anyway, like it's funny or crazy how far things have gone, and, that's the other thing. Think about that, those little seminars. Like, I think everything that we've ever done, we take a little bit of information from all those people, right? And there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Like, it's like sometimes I repeat stuff that somebody said, but usually I try to give them credit for it. But like, that's kind of what shapes us, right? Like, I learn something every day. Like, probably this podcast, everything that you guys said, like, I'm going to repeat it somewhere, right? And it just is. Like, if it's good information, even if it's bad information, I'll probably repeat that. I was like, don't do this. This one guy I know says all this crazy nonsense. Like, don't do that. But no, we're lucky, man. It's a good group of people that, I think it goes with what I said. Like, it's kind of weird to talk about our origin story, but it's just as weird to talk about like the things that brought us together to make a strong team, and I'm sure people don't want to hear about that from us, nor, we don't have to get into that. But that's the other thing I think is super important to people, is to find your tribe, right? And that could be a gym. Like, it's funny because I think Ron, actually Gary, I think all of us had this conversation one time or another. Like, if you're not having fun at the gym, then don't go there. And that goes for us teaching too, right? Like, if we're just belittling people and being assholes, and why would they give us money? But it's funny, I had a new guy call me today on the phone. He was very talkative, and I felt like the reason I talked to him a lot is I just felt like he like, I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt like he was going through something. There's just something weird about his voice, and it just felt like he just wanted to talk. And a lot of it was kind of odd, I mean? I was like kind of wanting to be off, because I was super, like, we talked about it earlier, I was really busy. I was like stressing out. And then that was the last thing. I didn't really want to have a phone call from somebody asking me gym questions. It just wasn't the time. But anyway, like, to not get on all of that guy's stuff, but he made a comment. He said, like, I'm kind of weird, because if I don't like the instructor, I'm not going to come to the gym. And I was like, buddy, that's like the most normal thing that you've said on the phone so far. And he was like, he didn't laugh, like, because and I was like, I'm being serious, man. Like, if you didn't like me and you're giving me, 65 or 85 a value a month, I was like, you'd be really stupid. And he still, like, I don't know what he like he wasn't getting my joke, but because I think, like I said, he was like into something, but it's the truth, right? And that's what I had said. I was like, man, yeah, I want you to have fun. I want you to like the instructor. If you don't come there. You find another gym. And that's exactly what you said earlier, Ron. I said, I want you to come and try things out for free, see what you think, and then we go from there. Let's not talk about the other stuff. And so I think it made him feel comfortable. But like that, like, I mean, that should be pretty normal, like, sentence, right? Like, not like, hey, I'm kind of weird. If I don't like you, I'm not going to come back. No, that's pretty normal, dude. Like,
Nothing.
we shouldn't be friends if you don't like me, like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
But unfortunately,
stuck with.
I'm sorry.
That's one thing that's always stuck with me. Like, way back when I was like talking about becoming an affiliate of yours, you were like, hey, I just want to be around cool people. Like, let's get together. If we're cool, like, you're good. And that's always stuck with me, and it's not about money, and it's about this or not about that. It's like, let's find, good people and let's be around them.
Yeah, it's always been that. I was going to say that's always been a big part of it for me too, is being around good people. And kind of echoing back to what Butch was talking about before, is jiu-jitsu for everybody. And I used to think, and I would say I've probably had a shift somewhere in the last year and a half, 2 years, but I used to think that maybe jiu-jitsu is not for everybody. Right. And I've kind of changed my way of thinking. I think jiu-jitsu's for everybody. I just don't think everybody's ready for jiu-jitsu. And that's the big thing, is, are you ready to go and do it? Because if you're not, then it's not going to be for you, because it's not your time to be there. I really do think that jiu-jitsu is for everybody, but not everybody's ready for jiu-jitsu. And part of it is, am I in the right place? Do they have a curriculum that is taught in a way that works for me? Are the people around me at jiu-jitsu supporting me and helping me through this? Or is this an adversarial role? You were talking about like the old school way. Part of me wishes that I went through that, because like Butch said, that I didn't go through that. I didn't go through it with the you did it wrong and slap you on the back of the head. And like, I can't believe you piece of shit. Like, why aren't you doing it right? because that's a good learning style for me. Also, I know that when I was competing that I probably ran some people off from jiu-jitsu because I wasn't the best training partner and I did a lot of shit that was mean and it was all ego filled and I had to win. And like, I went through that portion and, you know, I seen a thing from Tom DeBlast not too long ago that was talking about how he felt bad about the people that he probably drove out of jiu-jitsu. And I've probably stolen a lot of emotional growth, physical growth, and jiu-jitsu growth from people who would still be doing jiu-jitsu today if I wasn't the asshole that had an ego and went in and like I was getting better at jiu-jitsu for me. And I wasn't the best partner at that time. And I feel bad about that. And looking back on that, like I wish I wasn't that guy. I also know that that guy isn't the guy that I am today, and he had different goals. And maybe you could say that the instructor has a part to play in that because he needs to recognize and say, hey, you can't be going with these guys. They're not where you're at. They're not doing what you're doing. So part of that you could say is instructor, but also part of it is learning who you are and what you're doing and leaving that ego at the door, because I didn't always do that. I think all of us, especially the competitors, come with at least a little bit of ego. And so like the whole thing, the growth and everything, like try and find jiu-jitsu for you and make sure it's working for you. If you're not happy there, just like Butch was saying, there's some place that's going to make you happy. Jiu-jitsu is for everybody. As far as instructing, man, we're all a work in progress. I don't think there's the best instructor. I don't think there's the only way to instruct. I think there are great instructors for students who fit that profile. Like the Gordon Ryan, Danaher combination. I think that just works because, not just because Danaher's a great coach, I'm sure that he is, but also Gordon was the perfect student. You know, I think, and you can say that across a lot of things, whether it be Belichick and Tom Brady, like they work together. And for whatever reason, like those two things kind of aligned. Find that thing for you as an instructor. There's going to be students that you align to and that your teaching works best for them. And if it doesn't, you have other instructors at your academy. Use them. Let those guys, you don't have to be the North Star for everybody, right? I was thinking about this and we were kind of talking, and maybe this is another conversation for another day, but like, I've got guys that are under me who are blue belts or purple belts that teach things in a way that I can't teach. I might be able to do the move better than them, and I might be able to perform the move better than them, but I can't teach it the way they teach. And I try and take from those guys what I can, and put it into my own teaching skills. But like a big part of teaching is just knowing who you are. Right. And knowing how you teach. And if it's not the right fit, then it's not the right fit. Maybe you've got somebody that's in your stable that is the guy to do it. You know, I don't know.
No, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
good.
I think that's a part of like that ego thing. Is like we all have an ego. It's just like keeping that thing in check and keeping it healthy. And I have no problem if somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, I'm not getting what I want here. Like, hey, just go be happy doing jiu-jitsu somewhere else that fits you better. No problem. I hope you don't quit. Maybe this isn't the place for you, but no hard feelings, where like years and years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. You know what I mean? When that ego was unhealthy and kind of driving a lot of the stuff that I do. But I just want everybody to, just have fun and do it. Like, is it for everybody? I 100% agree with what you said, Gary. Like, you can't change somebody that doesn't want to be changed. Like, if you don't want to do jiu-jitsu, I can't make you do it. But if you do want to do it, I'll find a way to help you do it.
Yeah. And I think when we say it's for everybody, it's because we know it's a healthy outlet, right? It's a good stress reliever. Like, I mean, things that we read that's good for PTSD, right? It's something that kind of is, you're forcing yourself to meditate because you can think of nothing but jiu-jitsu at the time, right? Because somebody's trying to, like, I'm using words that aren't true, but there's somebody's trying to kill you, right? Like, that's not really true, but they're coming after you. So you have to like focus on that moment, and that's all. And when somebody meditates, what do they say? Be present, be in the moment. That's what we are in jiu-jitsu or combat sports. We're present in the moment because we have to be. And then there is something about that. Like, I don't know if it cleans our mind out. There is also, that's the mental part. I think it does like defrag the hard drive, and you kind of do all that and you're good. But it's also the physical. Like, I know, I go a lot, and I roll for an hour most days if I can with a couple guys, and I still need the physical part. Like, I just need it. Like, if I don't leave really sweaty, and sometimes I don't, because we're just flow rolling. If I leave like that, which I still got some of the flow roll, like mentally, I'm still not right. Like, I do need the hard workout. Like I got today, I needed to kind of de-stress myself today. So I rolled a little bit faster. I didn't necessarily, that's the other thing I'm trying to learn, is like, just because I'm trying to fix myself doesn't mean I need to do it. I'm like, to like the detriment of another person. Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to kill you today. Like, because that's not cool either. So I'm having a bad day. I'm trying to figure out a way to work hard without like submitting somebody 20 times or, whatever. Like, I'm not trying to act like I'm good, but it's like, what I'm saying. And so that today I still had a good workout. Like, I left, my gi was sweat, it was covered in sweat, everything. And then I felt better, but it was still a process because I had to figure out, I'm rolling with, I think I was rolling with a purple belt today, but it was like, I'm just a lot bigger. So I was like, how am I going to make myself sweat and do this? And the answer was, like you said, like, drop the ego, put myself in bad spots, like really bad spots, try to get out, and then go from there, work on some weird stuff that may or may not work. And I got it. And we both got something out of it. The guy that I was with really needed that moment, because he's missed jiu-jitsu because he was on vacations, he was on work trips. And so he's like, he needed this. He wrote me. I was very thankful. I needed it. But we both didn't kill each other, and we got what we needed. And we both probably came back to our families like a much happier person. And that's awesome. And that's the thing, like, that, I guess, is why I know for me, why I want to share that with people, but I have to learn, and this is why we're doing this, a way to convey that knowledge, that's not like, okay, well, you guys are just a bunch of meatheads doing this. It's like, no, there's a lot of benefit to this. And I want to convey it my own way. Like, I think, the way like Marcelo does it, or Hoist Gracie, or those guys, when I was around them, where it's like they preach jiu-jitsu to everybody. It was a little salesy to me, but also it was like they really love jiu-jitsu, but it was like a little much for me the way they did. It's just not my personality, but it'd be like, no matter what people would say, like, you should try jiu-jitsu. Like, I do agree with what they said, but I kind of just, that's not me. Like, my job is selling shit, and I don't sell that way either. I don't like, you should do my thing. I'm like, I got it. If you want to do it, here's the guy. Like, that's kind of my thing, but yeah, anyway, I think, maybe to put a bow on this for us, like, I think we've said a lot of really important stuff, a lot of beautiful stuff. I think hopefully other people think that too. But I think what I would say is that, again, that's why I'm asking about this knowledge, and we're sharing that knowledge, because I'm trying to be a better person even today. Like, I'll learn some stuff from this, and I'll keep learning. I'll keep reading books. And like that, when I say I read that Extreme Ownership, part of it's for my job, part of it's to become a better instructor. It might, like, I pick the most random stuff, like my Audible collection's 10 times full. I might listen to a 12-hour book, but in one sentence might fix a lot of stuff. It's just like, I got all these books on how to be a better leader, how to be a better coach, how to talk better, how to do this. It's like, it would be really weird if you read that. It almost looked like I'm trying to be like Leonardo DiCaprio when he played all those people and kind of like pretended he was stuff. Like, that's not exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to be like a better person, for people around me. But nonetheless, I don't know where to put an end to it, but I do appreciate the conversation and like maybe the new ideals. And do you guys have any closing words or anything for that? I don't want to cut you short, but I feel like we've said a lot of good stuff,
I just think one thing to kind of caveat off what you're saying there is, like, the big thing that I try to do as an instructor is figure out, like, how do I continue to improve myself, but not at somebody else's detriment, right? Like, I want to continue to grow, and I want to get better at jiu-jitsu, but I want to pull everybody up with me and, not hold them back. So that's always a work in progress, to do.
I think that's perfect, unless Gary's got something better to say.
No.
Those are
the sign-off words tonight, because I was
Yeah.
that guy that didn't do it. So I think that's perfect, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, Ron, man. Like, honestly, I learned a lot on here, but the most important thing, like I said, like, I think, whatever it is, the three of us are bonded in a certain way. And I think all of my friends, like, I don't have a lot of friends. I have, a lot of jiu-jitsu friends, I guess, like, but those are real. I mean, I don't mean that in a weird way. We're bonded in a way that other people can't be bonded, right? And that's why we don't quit on each other and do, been around each other for, like you said, 23 years plus. And I think the things that we do mean more than a lot of other things that we've been around. But you guys are my tribe. I'm using that word today because they said it on some podcasts. I've heard it about 1,000 times, but it was today podcast to listen to, so it's stuck in my head. But I think it's fitting because we found our group, right, and we're sticking with it. And I'll be with you guys as long as you have me as friends, and I couldn't have any better friends than you two. So I really appreciate you guys and love you guys, and thank you for everything, man.
Yeah, same to you, brother. Always.
Love you too, man. Take it easy. Have a good night. Thanks everybody for listening. Take care.
All right. See you guys.
Later, guys.